I never thought a single sentence from my mother could burn itself into my memory so deeply. But when she laughed in my face and said, "You'll never afford a home like your sister," something inside me cracked, quietly but decisively. And the worst part wasn't even her words. It was my sister's smug smile, the way she folded her arms like she'd already won some invisible competition I wasn't aware we were in. They had no idea the work I'd been doing behind the scenes. No idea what I'd been hiding. And they definitely didn't expect the text message that changed everything. I'm Teresa, the official less successful daughter in my family, a title neither earned nor chosen, but assigned. And like most roles forced onto someone, it came with its own script. My mother, Elena, believed success was measured the same way she measured everything else: appearances, property, and prestige. My sister, Lila, fit that mold perfectly. High-achieving. Polished. Married young. Bought a house at 28 with her husband, a man my mother constantly praised for his ambition even though most of his success came from his father's business. Meanwhile, I was the one who rented. The one who worked long hours. The one who didn't broadcast every achievement like a parade float. To them, that meant I had none. In the years leading up to the moment this story begins, I built a quiet life, one without unnecessary drama, without competing, without trying to prove myself. I'd learned long ago that validation from my mother was like chasing a mirage. No matter how close you got, it always evaporated before you reached it. But even with that understanding, some moments still stung. Some words still pierced deeper than expected. It started on a random Sunday afternoon. I'd come over for lunch because my mother insisted. Her invitations weren't really requests, they were demands disguised as politeness. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was that Lila was already there, with glossy nails, perfect hair, and that ever-present air of superiority she carried like perfume. As I sat down, my mother launched into a conversation about Lila's house renovations. New quartz counters. New lighting. New custom cabinets. I nodded politely, though I had no idea why she was telling me all this. I'd already heard the details on the family group chat. Then it came. My mother sighed dramatically, her fork clattering against her plate. "Oh, Teresa," she said with a pitying look, "I wish you could experience this. But owning a home, well, it's just not something everyone can handle." I stayed quiet. I'd learned silence was safer than engaging. But she wasn't done. She laughed, actually laughed, while waving her hand dismissively. "Let's be honest, sweetheart. You'll never afford a home like your sister. Not with your job." Lila smirked. A slow, triumphant smirk like she'd been waiting for this moment. She took a sip of her lemonade and said, "It's okay, Mom. Not everyone is meant for that level of responsibility." Responsibility. That was rich coming from her. I pressed my lips together, choosing calm over confrontation. "You don't know what I'm capable of," I said quietly. My mother dismissed me with the same ease she swatted away a mosquito. "Teresa, please. We all know your situation." That sentence, that one, was the match thrown into dry grass. My situation? They didn't know anything about my situation. What they didn't know was that for the past 3 years, I'd been running a side business quietly during nights and weekends. What they didn't know was that I'd been saving aggressively, cutting unnecessary expenses, learning about real estate, and building my credit. What they didn't know was that I had already taken the final step toward changing my life. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. The moment continued spiraling. My mother said I should ask Lila for financial advice. Lila pretended to be humble while offering smug, condescending tips like you should try budgeting apps and maybe you should stop eating out so much, even though she had no idea how I lived or what my finances looked like. Then the final jab came from Lila. "You should really stop comparing yourself to me. We're just on different paths." Different paths. Right. I excused myself from the table, pretending I needed a moment. In reality, I needed distance so I wouldn't explode. I stepped outside into the small backyard where the early afternoon sun hit my face. I inhaled slowly, feeling the heat warm my skin, grounding me. My phone buzzed. A message from my realtor. Closing confirmed. He's available Tuesday. Congratulations, Teresa. It was the timing of a lifetime. I stared at the message for a long moment, letting the reality settle in. I had done it. I had bought my first home, on my own, without help, without telling anyone. A wave of pride swelled in me, but so did something sharper, a decision crystallizing. I returned to the table and sat down. My mother and sister were still talking about backsplash tile. Then, casually, almost gently, I said, "You know, you're right." Both of them looked at me, taken aback. I continued, "We really are on different paths." My mother smiled knowingly as if she'd won. "Exactly, honey. And that's okay." I pulled out my phone, my palm steady, my heart strangely calm. "Actually," I said, "I think it's time you knew something." Layla leaned forward. "What's that?" I opened the message, the one with the photo of the deed and the confirmation. Then I hit send on the family group chat. Both their phones dinged at the same time. "What was that?" my mother asked. "Just read it," I said. The moment their eyes landed on the screen, everything shifted. My mother's face drained of color. Lila's smirk collapsed like wet paper. My text was simple. "I closed on my house today. Bigger lot. Better location. Fully mine." For a moment, the world was silent. Then, chaos. For a full 10 seconds, neither my mother nor my sister made a sound. It was almost eerie witnessing their reactions freeze in real time. Lila blinked twice, as if her brain rejected the reality on her phone screen. My mother's brows twitched upward, her mouth slightly open, wordless for the first time in years. You bought a house," my mother whispered finally. I nodded. "I did. But, how? When? What do you mean bigger lot? Better location?" My mother's voice shook with a mixture of disbelief and something uglier, panic. Lila let out a forced, humorless laugh. "You're kidding, right? This has to be, like, photoshopped or something." "It's not," I said calmly. "It's real." The closing was finalized this morning. My mother snatched up her phone again, zooming in on the confirmation screenshot I sent. She stared at it as though hoping the text would rearrange itself into something more comforting. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured. "Your job, your salary, you're single, how did you qualify for anything like this?" There it was. The underlying assumption. The same one I'd heard my entire life. If you're not married, you must be struggling. If you don't show off, you're failing. If you keep quiet, you have nothing to say. I exhaled slowly. I worked for it, Mom. I saved. I planned. I made choices you know nothing about. My mother frowned. But you never said anything. I don't need to announce every step I take, I replied. Not everything I do is a performance. Lila crossed her arms, face hardening. Okay, but what do you mean better location? She leaned forward, suddenly tense. Where is this place? A neighborhood near Brookridge, I said. Layla's head snapped back. Brookridge? You're lying. I tilted my phone toward her. Look again. Brookridge was a newer, more desirable community, cleaner, safer, better schools, better resale value. It made her neighborhood look dated by comparison. My mother pressed a hand to her chest. You bought in Brookridge? But that's an expensive area. Yes, I said. And I could afford it. Lila's cheeks reddened. That's impossible. You can't just buy there. You don't even understand the process. You probably got some cheap fixer-upper. No, I said. It's move-in ready. Newly renovated. And I paid the down payment myself. My mother narrowed her eyes. Nobody buys a house without help. I did, I replied. Because I didn't waste money on pointless things. I didn't rely on anyone else. I sacrificed for years while you two assumed I was failing. Layla scoffed. You're acting like some kind of martyr. I looked her squarely in the eyes. I'm acting like someone who's finally done being underestimated. She opened her mouth to reply, but the words died in her throat. My mother, meanwhile, looked like someone had unplugged the foundation of her worldview. But why didn't you tell us you were looking for a house? She asked quietly. I shrugged. Because every time I talked about anything important in my life, I I was met with comparison or criticism. And I wanted to do this my way, without the noise. My mother flinched, but didn't deny it. Silence settled over the table again. This time heavier, thicker, like the air right before a storm. Then it happened. The deflection. Predictable, reflexive, almost rehearsed. My mother straightened her shoulders and said, "Well, congratulations. It's just surprising, that's all." Her tone was brittle, shaky. "But, are you sure you didn't overextend yourself? The responsibility of a house." "There it is," I murmured. "What?" she snapped. "You can't decide whether to congratulate me or warn me that I'm about to fail." "That's not." "It is," I cut in, my voice low but steady. "You can't fathom the idea that I did something without your guidance. Without your approval." Her lips tightened. She said nothing. Lila tapped her nails against the table. "Honestly, Teresa, you didn't have to show off like that. Just because you bought a house doesn't mean you're better." "I never said I was better," I replied. "But you two made it clear, for years, that I was less. Less capable. Less responsible. Less everything. And now that I've proven otherwise, you're scrambling to rewrite the story." My mother bristled. "We were only trying to motivate you." I laughed softly. "Mocking isn't motivation." She opened her mouth but closed it again. Even she couldn't defend her own behavior. Layla leaned forward with narrowed eyes. "So what? You think the house makes you on my level?" The insecurity slipped out before she could catch it. I tilted my head. "Why would we even be on levels?" She froze. "We're sisters," I continued. "But you treat everything like a competition you must win at all costs. I'm not part of that game." "You clearly are," she snapped. "Otherwise you wouldn't have shown us the house like this." "I showed you," I said evenly, "because you cornered me with your mockery. Because you've spent your entire life assuming you're the superior one. And because, for once, I wanted the truth in the open." Layla looked away. My mother looked older than she had a minute ago. The moment stretched between us, uncomfortable, raw. Then my mother said quietly, I didn't expect this from you, Teresa." I met her eyes. "Exactly. You didn't expect it. You didn't expect anything good from me." She inhaled sharply, like the truth had slapped her. Layla stood abruptly. "Well, good for you." Her voice was stiff. "But don't expect me to pretend this suddenly changes everything." "I'm not asking for anything," I replied. "Least of all your approval." She stormed off toward the hallway, muttering something about needing air. My mother didn't chase after her. Instead, she stared down at her hands, her expression unreadable. She finally whispered, "I didn't realize you felt this way." I swallowed the familiar ache in my chest. "I didn't realize you'd ever care." Her eyes flicked up, hurt flashing in them, but also understanding. Maybe for the first time. "I'm proud of you," she said, but it sounded hesitant, like the words were new to her mouth. I wanted to believe her. But understanding your child after years of dismissal doesn't happen in a single sentence. "I appreciate that," I said softly. "But pride that only shows up after the achievement isn't really pride. It's acknowledgement. And that's fine. I'll take acknowledgement." My mother looked down again. "I don't know how to fix what I've done." "You can start," I said gently, "by stopping the comparisons. By seeing me as I am, not as who you've decided I am." She nodded slowly. For a moment, just a moment, there was peace. But the storm wasn't over. Because Lila returned from the hallway, face pale, hands shaking slightly. "Mom," she said, her voice wavering. "I need to talk to you. Now." "What's wrong?" my mother asked, alarm rising. Layla swallowed hard. "It's about my house." My mother stiffened. "What about it?" Lila hesitated. Her eyes flicked to me, filled with something sharp and vulnerable. She whispered, "We're behind on our mortgage." The air in the dining room thinned until it felt like we were standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting for the ground to crumble beneath us. My mother blinked slowly, as though trying to process the words she'd just heard. "You're what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Layla swallowed hard. We're 3 months behind. My mother's fork clattered onto her plate. 3 months? Layla, how is that even possible? You and Daniel both have jobs. You have savings. What do you mean 3 months? Lila's eyes darted to mine briefly, then away again. We don't have savings. Not anymore. My mother's face twisted in disbelief. I don't understand. Lila pressed her palms to her forehead. Mom, things have been tight. Daniel lost a contract. Then the car needed repairs. And then the property taxes went up this year, Anne. My mother cut her off sharply. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell me? Layla exhaled shakily. Because I didn't want you to think I was failing. A thick silence fell across the room. I stared at her, stunned, not because she was behind on her mortgage, but because, for once, she was being honest. My mother's voice softened. Layla, sweetheart, you know you could have come to me. Layla's jaw clenched. No, I couldn't. You expect me to be this perfect image. The one who always has it together. The one who makes you proud. If I told you we were struggling, you would have. I would have helped, my mother insisted. Or judged me, Lila whispered. My mother froze. I sat back in my chair, watching the dynamic unravel. The golden child admitting cracks in her gold-plated life. The mother who had spent years putting her on a pedestal now realizing how fragile that pedestal really was. My mother reached out, but Lila stepped back. No. Let me talk. My mother hesitated, then nodded. Lila turned toward me, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and defensiveness. And before you say anything, don't act like this is some karma moment. I never wanted to compete with you. It was Mom. My mother's head snapped toward her. Excuse me? Lila shook her head. Don't act surprised. You compared us constantly. You made it clear who was the successful one. And I got addicted to that. To being praised. To being the one you bragged about. So when things started falling apart, I hid it. Because I didn't want to lose the only thing you ever valued in me. Her voice cracked on that last sentence, and something inside me shifted. All the smugness. All the condescension. All the superiority. It wasn't confidence. It was fear. My mother stared at her daughter, the daughter she had spent decades grooming as the shining example of achievement, and for the first time, she saw the cost of her favoritism. I didn't know, my mother whispered. You didn't want to know, Lila shot back. You were so busy proving to everyone that you raised a perfect daughter that you didn't see me drowning. The pain in her voice was raw. Real. My mother's hands trembled. I'm so sorry. I looked away, giving them a moment. It felt too intimate, too vulnerable, like seeing behind a curtain that had been closed for years. But Lila wasn't done. And then, she turned toward me again. You bought a house. In Brookridge. On your own. While we're barely hanging on. And I panicked. Because I thought, if you're doing better than me, then what am I? I inhaled deeply. You're my sister. She blinked slowly, tears forming in her eyes. You're my sister, I repeated, softer now. Not my rival. Not my opponent. Not someone I'm trying to beat. Our lives aren't a scoreboard. Lila let out a shaky breath. It never felt that way. Because Mom made it that way, I said gently. My mother put a hand over her mouth, her eyes welling up. For once, she didn't argue. I continued, every achievement you had was praised like a trophy. Every achievement I had was ignored, or compared, or dismissed. But that wasn't your fault. You grew up on a pedestal you didn't ask for. Lila nodded, tears escaping. It's exhausting, she admitted. I felt something loosen inside me, something old, something resentful. I didn't forgive everything in one moment, but I understood. And you're in trouble now, I said. Real trouble. Layla nodded again. If we miss another payment, we could lose the house. My mother stepped forward, grabbing her daughter's hands. We'll fix this. We will fix this. You're not losing your home. Lila whispered, I didn't want to come to you only when things were bad. My mother shook her head. You come to me always. Always. I'm your mother. I watched them quietly, absorbing the irony that the daughter who'd been praised for her responsibility was now fighting to keep her home, while the daughter who'd been criticized for years had managed to secure her future quietly and independently. Life has a strange sense of balance. My mother suddenly turned toward me. Why didn't you tell us you were doing well, Teresa? I met her eyes. Because every time I shared anything, it turned into a comparison. Or a lecture. Or an argument. So I stopped sharing. She nodded slowly, shame softening her expression. I didn't realize how much I pushed you away. You didn't push me away, I said gently. You pushed me into silence. She covered her face for a moment, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I believed her. Not because she was perfect, far from it, but because some people never realize the harm they cause until the mirror finally cracks. We stood there, the three of us, in a strange, quiet triangle of truth. Years of resentment. Years of expectations. Years of unspoken wounds. And finally, years of misunderstandings collapsing. After a long moment, Lila whispered, "Do you think we could start over?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, I didn't see a rival. I saw a sister who'd been carrying a burden I never knew existed. Yes, I said. We can start over. She let out a long, relieved exhale. My mother wiped her eyes. Both of you deserve better from me. The vulnerability in her voice softened something in me too. We all deserve better from each other, I said. No shouting. No bitterness. Just quiet, steady truth. My mother placed her hands on both our shoulders. Then let's rebuild this family. Honestly this time. We all nodded. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't an instant transformation. But it was a start. The first real start we'd had in years. And the moment we stepped into it together, something inside me finally settled. For the first time in a long time. I wasn't the less successful daughter. I was simply Teresa. The woman who bought her own home. The woman who stood her ground. The woman who refused to be underestimated any longer. And finally, my family saw me. I left my mother's house that evening feeling lighter than I had in years. Nothing was magically fixed, but something important had shifted. For once, the truth wasn't a weapon, it was a bridge. And as I drove toward the neighborhood where my new home waited, I felt something unfamiliar, peace. Life has a way of exposing what comparisons try to hide. My mother's mockery, my sister's smile, and my quiet determination all collided into a moment none of us expected. But sometimes the hardest conversations finally free us from the roles we never chose. I'm not the lesser daughter. I'm not competing. I'm simply building a life I'm proud of, one decision, one boundary, one truth at a time. And if this story proves anything, it's that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's preparation.